On sunny evenings up and down the UK, midweek, cyclists are lining up to go out for their weekly chain gang training ride. And that's exactly what I did this week. I went out to do the Wirral chain gang. You can see the loop that they do here. It used to be run by Birkenhead North End, but now it's run by North Wirral Velo, I believe, who by all accounts seem to be just a nice bunch of lads. So appreciate them organising it, but anyone can turn up. And for some of you, this will be so familiar that you'll think it's not even worth a video. But if you're newer to cycling, or if it's not such a part of cycling culture in the country you're from, I thought you might be interested in what goes on at one of these weekly chain gangs. So this is my experience, and my first chain gang for about 15 years, so, you know, expect me to be rusty.
One race I just remembered.
Yeah?
Through Thorpe, when you go through Williston.
Oh yeah, okay.
Nick, is it? Yeah. I just recognise your face. I think I've seen a few of your old video.
Oh yeah? Oh! I thought I'd leave that in. That was a local guy named Mark introducing himself, and you got to hear my social awkwardness in reply. Hello! Mark's a very strong cyclist. I see him on a lot of the leaderboards around here. And actually, everyone who came to this for strong cyclists, I don't know if it's like that every week, but every one of these guys, you know, more than capable of handling themselves with the power that was going down. And I'll talk more about some of the other people, none of whom I knew apart from Jared, who I'm just passing there before this, but they were very nice and welcoming. It was good to chat to them all, however briefly, through ragged breath with 180 BPM heart rate. So if you're not familiar with a chain gang, it's also called riding through and off. It's very straightforward that you're riding two abreast and there's two streams of traffic relative to one another. The outside is moving up and the inside is moving down. If you're familiar with Zwift, it's not dissimilar to a team time trial, except there you would have a single file format. And it's a really good way of training, of riding really fast and kind of replicating what would go on in races. I was incredibly rusty with the format of like when to pull in, understanding when to put your power down, and when to moderate your power, because the aim isn't to drop people, it isn't just to ride off. The aim is to get the group moving as fast as you can around this circuit. I've skipped through bits and pieces on this circuit, but I've tried to show a full rotation at least a couple of times now, so you get an idea of the whole pattern. I know it's so simple that you're probably thinking you don't need to have done this to death, but like I say, it's nice to be clear and show all of it. So unfortunately this route goes through two villages, and I was impressed with how these guys sort of diligently obey all of the rules of the road. You know, we stopped for red lights, we went slow through the villages to be aware, but otherwise we're trying to hold maybe 30 miles an hour a lot of the time as we go flat out on these roads on the outside. So this is where you learn your craft of drafting. If you lose the wheel, unless you are an incredibly talented cyclist, you're screwed in these, and it underlines how important positioning is. So quite a lot of the time you'll see me behind this guy in a red jersey. I believe his name's Joe, and if he's the guy I think he is, I see his name quite often, quite far ahead of mine on a lot of the climbs of Wales. A very, very talented cyclist. I was strategically behind him a fair bit at the time because he's a slightly bigger build than me, so it wasn't so hard to be in his draft. Jared, the only fella I've met here, on the other hand, is a relatively small guy, so you knew about it when you're behind him, because suddenly you're pushing 50 more watts for the same position in the group for the same speed. So you see that we do these on not main roads, but relatively main roads. The straight southern side of this is the Chester High Road, which is an A road. At this time of evening on a midweek, they're clear enough, we're moving fast enough at 30 miles an hour to behave like traffic and just be sensible, keep an eye out. If you want an idea of how hard these sessions are, you can see that my heart rate is over 180 an awful lot. My heart rate almost never gets over 180. I think at Hill Climb Nationals I only maxed out at 178, so that's some idea of how hard I had to work. As we come up here, it's a very slight drag. I've taken the gradient metric off completely because, give or take, this is a flat circuit, but even this 1% drag, it can feel quite uphill, and there, behind Joe again, I was still doing sort of 400 to 500 watts to move up. I'm actually still a little bit unclear about when you hit the front. Is it the etiquette to keep your power down for a while, or as soon as you hit the front do you move over and let off? I don't know. Maybe I'll find out next week. The hardest part, honestly, was the road surfaces are a bit crap in places, and obviously when you're moving very quickly as a unit, that can be problematic. I'm going pretty deep here, up into Thornton Huff, to hold the wheel and to try and keep the group moving, but you can see we've thinned out quite a lot. This is most of the way around the first lap, and we got so stretched out on that long drag there that actually we dropped a couple of guys for the rest of the chain gang, unfortunately. I said this was my first chain gang for 15 years, and actually 15 years ago I went out with the North End and got dropped not even this far around this circuit, so yeah, I've been there. And we never exactly recovered from it. The format on this whole stretch before we hit the high road again, we lost the through and off working as a unit. We got a bit ragged, a bit punchy, and the guy just ahead of me now, Robin, who organises it, and I were both almost off the back. Managed to chase back on. I'll confess he did most of the work, and I sat in. And I rewatched the footage in full, and I couldn't even see the one moment it happens. It's just like a split second of you don't grab a wheel, and that's it. It can be terminal almost, and that's why these are such great training, because you would never find me on a Saturday ride on my own at 185 BPM thinking, okay, but I've got to put down 500 watts for a while now. I would just not do it. They hold you accountable to everyone else and to the draft, which is an incredibly powerful training tool, especially for those who race, and a lot of these guys are good road and crit racers, so I assume it's even more useful to them than it is to me. So we managed to regroup anyway, and it was a smaller group at this point because we'd lost just a couple, I think, and I was really starting to wonder about my ability to stay with this group, as to whether I was going to complete it or not as we started lap 2 going down the high road. I was actually feeling fine moving up, putting the power down and doing the turn, etc. It was then when you pull off, I was really struggling to feel like I was getting any recovery at these sort of powers, and that is kind of the point of the chain gang, right, is to, you know, learn to recover at high intensity. But also, this lad just ahead of me, who's on the Dolan LS sponsored team, very strong cyclist, and I was just struggling to hold his wheel. I'm not at all embarrassed by that. I don't know the lad personally, he seemed very nice. He was just that much stronger than me that it was very hard holding his wheel. And indeed, a little bit further on, I think we reached a point with the whole group. I don't know whether someone said this to him or he made it a decision of his own, but rather than being part of the group and him having to let off and honestly not getting a good enough training session for his own benefits out, instead he dropped back. We chain ganged and he time trialed behind us to hold the group, and I think the fact that he could do that, stayed with us for the whole thing, but about 20 metres off the back, goes to show just how strong he was, really. Very impressive indeed. So from here on, every so often in the rear view camera you might see a lone cyclist lurking behind. That'll be Tom. And Robin, who's just behind me now in the North Wirral Velo kit. I realise that means nothing to almost all of you, in the predominantly white kit with the, I don't know, blue or green stripe across it. Colour blindness isn't helping me out there. Was really helpful to me because I told him it was my first one in a long time. So quite often as he came through, he'd just like give me a pointer, a tip about positioning, or, you know, say, you should pull into the left earlier when you're coming off the front, or even something as simple as saying last man. I found that a really helpful shout that you've then hit the back as the numbers change and stuff, to know that you need to pull out and grab a wheel, otherwise you're going to be off the back. That kind of thing is very helpful. And as we got further down these rotations, I think the communication was very important, because the tireder you are, the harder it is to be fully observant. So as you can see, coming into this village, we all needed to communicate with each other, say, ease up, car come in, that kind of thing, to make sure this stayed safe and fun. So around this bend, it always strung out, and you have to sort of chase back on for this nice long stretch down the B road here. And coming up, it might be a little while yet, is sort of my only sour moment of the evening. The only thing I didn't enjoy. That car overtaking those two cyclists, but beeping at us for coming the other way. Other people in the group foresaw that coming and shouted ease off so that we didn't have a head-on collision, but I'm absolutely furious that that car felt that we were in the wrong on our own side of the road, just cycling. It doesn't make any sense. It was a complete dickhead overtake. What a knob. So it does look a little bit more ragged at times here, all cut up. And along this stretch is very slightly undulating. It's just enough that you can see the odd little gaps start to form here and there. And as I've watched this back, I've realised how not smooth my power was. And I think I'm hoping to ride this again this Thursday, but I'm hoping to ride it again periodically anyway, as long as they run through summer. And something I will need to work on is the smoothness of my power and trust myself. Although I've said, how strong all of these riders are, I hope it's not arrogant to say I felt perfectly comfortable among them. I don't think I was punching above my weight, and trust that I've got the power to get that wheel. I don't need to do a 500, 600 watt surge. I can just sit and push on and not cut it up and make a gap. I can, ride back on smoothly. So that's kind of a lesson I need to learn a little bit, is to be aware, and probably similarly when I pull in, not come off the power so suddenly, pull in and gradually wind the power down to be overtaken, as opposed to pull in and freewheel, as I uncomfortably found myself doing more than once, which is just stupidity, isn't it? Definitely not a good idea. Fancy that I'm back on this guy's wheel, because I do have a little bit of a thought going on there that, be on the wheel of the good draft. I don't mind that at all. I probably should have said this earlier. I'm not trying to be materialistic, but it's not often that I will be sitting on my beautiful look that I love and think, wow, this is one of the worst bikes here. Yeah, I did feel a bit like I was riding the bargain basement machine compared to everyone else. Probably not true, but clearly people were taking the aero side of things more seriously than I do, which makes sense if you're gonna race, for example, like a lot of these people will. I'm mostly bothered about how fast I am up hills, so I don't really care about that, hence not having the deep sections and stuff, but we were on a range of bikes, and it wasn't holding anyone back or giving anyone an unfair advantage. So as we're coming down on the third and final lap, I did feel like things had slowed down a little bit. There were still surges, but I think being a smaller group, we had to be a bit more conservative. Some people's pulls were getting a bit longer if they were feeling good, I guess, which was helpful. And it's quite funny watching my footage in full, watching people's positions gradually get more and more aero. Everyone, starts off relatively aerodynamic, but by this point I think everyone's trying to squeeze out every possible advantage they can, because even for the stronger riders there, I guess this is still a hard session. I don't think anyone can do this and say, they're in zone 2 or whatever. Maybe for some it's harder than others, and for me it was especially hard, because this is very much not the sort of thing I'm good at. I say that about everything, don't I? I don't know what the sort of thing I am good at is, but not this. Definitely not this. Maybe riding for 12 hours or something. I'm not sure. Maybe it's 5-minute climbs after 8 hours of cycling, if that's not too niche of a skill set to claim as my best. I've perhaps left too much footage in, and you might be getting bored, but I wanted to show off without too much editing the sort of the technical side of it, but also the atmosphere side of it. Yeah, we're not talking very much, but I found it all to be very like cordial and pleasant, and that sounds like a weird thing to say, but a lot of my memory of club stuff 15 years ago is being shouted at for not being close enough to the wheel, being shouted at for being on the front too long, being shouted at for my cadence, being shouted at for the line I took through corners. I just remember stuff like this, men in their 50s getting unduly aggro about unnecessary things. And there was absolutely none of that, which perhaps should be the norm, but it was still a pleasant surprise. So I was glad. I did really enjoy it. And weirdly, I quite enjoyed coming around some of these bends relatively fast. And, you know, riding at speed is fun. Riding barely ever under 30 or under 40 kph is good fun. It's nice to go fast, and to feel safe doing it, to feel comfortable doing it, to feel like you trust all the people around you as you're doing it, was great as well. I've just been told here we sprint into Thornton Huff, and I thought, okay, well, Thornton Huff's about a mile away, so whatever. We come up to this roundabout by Wirral Rugby Club, stop because there's a car coming, and bam, yeah, Thornton Huff is a mile away. But off these chaps went on their attack, and I was on the back, could not be bothered going for it. Just like on Zwift, it's a Thursday night, so my aim is to get dropped for the sprint. That's what I do. If I'd have made it with them, there's nothing I would have done anyway. I'd have been out the back. But as it was, I think it was Jared, Mark, and Robin with me. We just, yeah, kept going. So that leaves Ed, Joe, and Tom, I believe, the lad who had been riding behind us. So at no point was he dropped. He had been riding behind us and overtook us for the sprint, which was always something he was planning to do, be a part of that. Fair play. They must have properly gone for it at the front. I'll pretend that I was leading Mark and Jared out there, and on this little uphill, I went, off you pop, lads, whatever. I'll cruise home at this point. So I really enjoyed this. Here's my power for the whole duration. It was 280 watts average for the hour that we were doing these, and on intervals you can see the kind of punch recover format of these efforts. I really enjoyed it. I'd really like to do this again, and hopefully I'll be consistent through summer coming to them. Look at Thornton Huff as I roll through. Pretty little village built by my historical boss, Lord Leverhulme, to house, I don't know, people who worked in his manor and whatnot. I hope you've enjoyed the Wirral Chain Gang, a different sort of video, but of a ride I really enjoyed. Cheers for watching, guys.